And it's not like it was super easy, but I would say probably I've never been happier than I was when I started my fourth decade, because I was starting all over and I had this real like, well, fuck it kind of attitude. Like I'm either going to do the patterns I did before and try to rebuild in the way I was taught to build and do all the things, knowing it could kind of end me up in the same place, feeling really self-abandoned and not having the social markers. I could say, fuck the social markers. What do I really want? What do I really want? And what do I really need? And let's see if I can go after that, you know? And so that's what I did.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 410. We're Finn and Emma. I love today's conversation with Kristen. She currently identifies as a relationship anarchist who is open to the possibility and uncertainty of life. She also describes herself as a joyful, curious, growth-oriented being who's endlessly surprised by where she finds herself on any given day.
Yep, and today she finds herself on our podcast.
Yes,
and
talking with us.
Yeah, and Emma loves this conversation, I love this conversation, and we're pretty sure you're going to love it as well. Kristen's story is incredibly powerful and inspiring as she shares with us how she went from most of her sexual and relationship experiences between, ages of about 13 to 37 being primarily driven by trauma to her sexual self-actualization in her 40s and on into today where she feels like in her 50s that everything is integrating.
Woohoo!
Kristen isn't just a hobby.
I'm celebrating it.
Totally worth celebrating.
I just caught you off guard.
Yeah, I was not ready. That was not in our notes. The woohoo was not in the notes. Kristen isn't just a hobbyist inspiring badass. She's also a professional inspiring badass. She works as a licensed marriage and family therapist here in California and co-created the Non-Monogamy card game with another former guest, Isla, from a few weeks ago on episode 407. You can find links to Kristen's work and the Non-Monogamy card game in the podcast show notes down below or over on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. And maybe just a quick note on the Non-Monogamy card game.
Yes, the Non-Monogamy card game invites exploration and deep connection with your partners as you navigate crucial non-monogamy conversations with creativity and integrity. The game is built to be used as a tool for building a strong foundation of trust and safety in all of your explorations about relationships in general and non-monogamy more specifically. It is a wonderful game. Finn and I have used it, and we're excited to hopefully spread the love and have more of you check it out as well.
Yeah, please go grab a copy. Links are in the podcast show notes, and you can save a couple of bucks when you use the links there. So go do that. And with that, we're going to jump right into the interview with Kristen for anybody who is a premium subscriber. And for the rest of you, we've got a couple of quick announcements.
First up, the premium subscription. If you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get important dates of upcoming events in the outro. To sign up for the premium subscription, go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up right there for $4 a month.
Next up, we want to tell you all about our community. We tell you about it every week because it's one of our favorite places on the internet. Probably it's one of the better places on the internet, especially these days.
Yes.
So we lead a community full of over 300 incredible people from around the world who socialize and support one another every single day. We host a community on a platform called Mighty Networks, and as part of the community, you also have access to free monthly community support Zoom calls, monthly virtual workshops, and in-person events as well, all for less than $8 a month.
Our next in-person event is coming up very, very soon, just in a couple of weeks, October October 3rd to the 5th in the East Bay. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area. We would love to have you come join us. You can still buy a ticket. Come join us October 3rd to the 5th. We're going to have speed friending, a pool party, lots of time to hang out and connect with each other.
Yeah, there is more information about what that event looks like over on the community tab of our website. Scroll down a bit and you'll see a link there for the East Bay Retreat Program Guide. And while you're there, you'll also see links for all of our monthly community workshops, which you can go and read about, all of our past workshops, which you have access to the recordings when you join the community, and our upcoming workshops, which our next one is on October 16th. It is going to be led by Nixie Knock, and it is on personal agency. So we would love to have you come join us for any and all of these things. Again, you can find out more under the community tab of our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Next up, if you go over to the resources tab of our website, you'll see links for stdcheck.com. It is the service that Finn and I use. It is our favorite way to get tested for STIs. If you use the links over there on the resources page, you save $10, making a 10-panel test only $129, and you support the podcast and the show. So thank you so much in advance for using those links. We really appreciate it.
The other thing we really appreciate is when you reach out to us and send us an email letting us know that you want to come on the podcast and share your story, just like Kristen. You don't have to be a therapist or the creator of a game. You just have to be you. This podcast is powered by the stories of everyday people just like you sharing your story. So please reach out to us, send us an email, and we will make it happen. You can also shoot us an email with any comments or questions you might have about the podcast. And all of this happens over under the Contact Us tab of our website. From there, I think you'll figure it out.
And with that, let's go and talk with Kristen.
Welcome to the podcast, Kristen. We are excited to chat today. We're excited to hear about your story, hear about your work, hear about the non-monogamy card game. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, we're looking forward to digging in, and we got lots to talk about. So maybe let's jump into just a quick intro. Who is Kristen?
So hi, my name is Kristen Van Klutwyk. Yes, it's a long, interesting last Dutch name. Let's see. What feels important to share about me? I am a curious human who lives in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the Bay Area of California. I was a career educator for over 3 decades. I started one of the first nature-based charter schools in California as a 20-something young person. Decided that my activism was going to be through education and working with children. And somehow or another, 33 years later, I'm now a practicing marriage and family therapist, serving people 12 and up across California, and have a beautiful little office here in Felton. And so, I don't know, my life is a natural progression, and I'm curiously finding myself here sort of living a new iteration at 57, and I'm a joyful, curious, growth-oriented being that's endlessly surprised at where I find myself on any given day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, we are glad you found your way to us, and that today you're on our podcast. We're excited to talk to you, and it sounds like you've just been trailblazing for 30 plus years of work and probably personal life as well.
Yeah. I often find myself maybe a little ahead of the ball. And so sometimes I've noticed, like, for example, I've been doing yoga since 1988 and eating echinacea since 1988. But back in 1988, people thought that yoga was a spiritual practice that had no value in Western society, and that herbs were a weird thing that people shouldn't take. And now it's very mainstream. So it's interesting. You know, being on your podcast today, we're here sort of to talk about non-monogamy and my journey in non-monogamy. And if you would have asked me in 1988 what non-monogamy was, I would not have been able to tell you. So at this particular inflection in time, sort of personally and politically, like maybe actually in a timely way, I might be talking about things that people are interested in talking about. So that's always
Yeah.
Well, we hope so, because we're counting on people wanting to listen. So
Yeah, exactly. And it brings me to the next question of, like, what So you said you didn't really know back in 1988, like what non-monogamy was, but where does alternative relationships in some form like enter your life?
It actually entered once I got divorced. It was sort of, if I were to look at the seeds of being a bisexual, being a feminist, there were so many signposts along the way that I didn't recognize because there was no language in mononormative culture back then for expressing what was actually my reality. So there was a lot of being sort of like asleep to the reality of who I was or sort of ignoring the signposts. And they were definitely there before I even got married, but there was no way of understanding it.
Yeah.
So it was very much ignored. And then through the evolution of a 14-year marriage, there were signs all along the way there that weren't marrying my values or my genuine self. So, for example, thinking that jealousy and envy and sort of male dominance was actually how men showed you they loved you. And if a man treated you like that, well, then that probably meant he really cared about you, not that that was really toxic and unhealthy for the both of us. So as things sort of unraveled in my marriage, and I extricated myself from that situation, as so many of us do. I went immediately into a rebound relationship with a kitchen table polyamorist. And I did not know what any of that was at all. And so I had an extremely hard landing into alternative relationship styles. It felt like I was drug into something I didn't understand. And I had so much shame around my lack of understanding that I never spoke up. And it was really hard and it didn't go well. And then it wasn't until almost being 40, quite honestly, that once I had done my first chosen celibacy, where I went a whole year and didn't date anyone at all, and just did a lot of therapy and a lot of work on myself, and realized in that iteration, like I had been exploring relationships since I was like 5 or 6 years old without stopping ever. And so that was like just a really incredibly powerful time in my life. And I've done chosen celibacy a multitude of times since then. And every single time it brings me closer to my own truth about how I want to be in the world and how I want to be in relationship. And so then I would say probably was waking up in my late 30s, and then the whole decade of my 40s, I would categorize that as a sexual self-actualization of the utmost order, and it was a beautiful awakening. And now in my 50s, I really feel like everything is sort of integrating.
Yeah.
We got so
Wow.
much to dig into.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
so
Thank you for
excited.
laying it out so beautifully like that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Kristen, going back to, I mean, you said you've been relationshipping since you were like 5 or 6. And I'm curious, I mean, what that looked like then, but also what were like the early days of sort of coming into, like, we'll call it like the late teens, early 20s, those sort of normal time when all of us are starting to explore relationships. And because you
Mm.
also threw out that there were some like signposts in there that were some clues that maybe got ignored along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the context would definitely be there was a lot of trauma. So I was the product of trauma. I was raised in trauma. I wasn't raised with anything really positive around any kind of relationship in any way, but I was a very sexually curious child. I was kissing kids on the monkey bars when I was 5, and I was simulating sex acts with little girls, that were sleeping over. I mean, all purely innocent, super healthy stuff. Masturbating, all of those really normal things. But in the family that I was raised in, it was just really shut down and super shamed. Very curious about my dad's Penthouse and Playboy magazines, like always seriously just wanting to know so much about my body and other people's bodies and pleasure-centered feelings in the body. And so all of those things were super healthy and they were really there. And I would say like all of my first sexual explorations were with female bodied people and really healthy. It wasn't really until I was in middle school and then I was sexually assaulted by an adult. And then I would say probably my adolescence and teen years were very much trauma driven in that way. So really seeking out sex and um, hooking up a lot in lots of dangerous ways with people that weren't good and healthy for me, just purely out of a trauma response. And that probably went on for 10 solid years, where I couldn't have sex unless I was high, unless I was completely dissociated from my body. And it was very much, I had super shut down everything having to do with women because of course this was the 80s and it was super homophobic and you were either straight or you were gay. You weren't there was not even, I don't at all recall anybody ever talking about bisexuality at all. And I think there was one exploration I had with a woman in college when the guy I was engaged to was overseas, and I was madly falling in love with this woman, and we were spending all this time together. And after about 6 months of just hanging out and riding bikes and hiking and like doing all the things, like we went back to her dorm room one day and she took her clothes off and laid down on the bed, and I freaked the fuck out. I was like, "What are you doing? I'm not a lesbian." And she's like, "I don't care. Like, I like you. Like, I want to take this to the next level." And I totally shamed her, shamed me, and ran away as fast as I could, you know? So there was just a lot of that kind of stuff. And it was actually the blessing of getting pregnant when I was 23 that I started having symptoms of PTSD. And I say thankful because it was the help of therapy and going through the process of the pregnancy that I realized all of the trauma that I've been holding in my body for the last 10 years. And I started to begin to unravel it. But it wouldn't be another 17 years before had been in therapy almost constantly since that time that I started to come out in a sexually healthy way. I would say nothing between the ages of 13 and maybe 37 was truly embodied, healthy, actualized, pleasure oriented, and not informed by trauma in some way.
Wow.
And I think that's a lot of people's stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'm very grateful and appreciate you sharing that because I know it's probably not easy to talk about, but it is, like you said, it's the reality for so many people
It's really well titrated in my system. So, I mean, it can be, maybe I lose track of how shocking it can land on other people, but I've done a lot of work around it. And honestly, I talk a lot in my practice about finding the opportunities in everything, right? I hate and don't believe in the tropism of like everything happening for a reason. What I do believe is that it's our birthright and our sovereignty can be found in making the meaning. Whatever meaning we want to make about things is where the power is. And so it really informs my practice a lot. And to be able to say, no, really, like, you might not actualize until you're well into your 40s. So the fact that you haven't had an orgasm at 30, like, it's pretty normal, you know, like it's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. And so, yeah, it's been a long and hard journey, but it is what it is. And
yeah.
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 Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I love that reframe.
Yeah.
That again, it's not that this happened for a reason, but this happened, and now what do I do with it? What do I make of it? And where do I take this in the world for me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so so at 23, you said you were. I mean, I just caught too that like you said you launched or you started the first nature-based charter school at that same age that you were also pregnant and starting to untangle all of this web. That's a pretty intense.
And I assume you were engaged and got married at some point in there too.
Yeah, I was married. I met my kid's dad in college, and we were activists, environmental scientists, and the first Gulf invasion had happened. And so I was really waking up in a lot of ways and finding my strength and my power in the world. And school was always the safest place for me growing up. I moved 19 times before I graduated from high school. So the consistency of public school was something that I very much leaned on. But then there was a lot of disillusionment with traditional education. And again, making meaning out of chaos. So we have the right wing to thank for charters because they were originally trying to do an end run around public education by funding religious education with public money. So they just wanted to throw everything out to let anybody start a school. And so a lot of us started schools, and a lot of them have gone, south for lots of good reasons. But I was lucky to, hit an incredible inflection point where I saw some things in my local public schools that were really racist and really misogynist and unfair. And I was on the tear of a young 20-something person where I'm like, I can change the world. So having a baby at home, that was a big deal for me. I was all about subverting the dominant paradigm. And so how can I take a system and do what works for me with it and sort of make things better in the world? And so that was kind of a common theme across the board in my life. And so, yeah, I was wanting public access for everyone. I didn't want it to be a private, money to be a barrier. And so it was a really beautiful thing. So, yeah, I did that for 14 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, you did a lot all at once.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, the math keeps popping into my head because you said 14 years after 23 would be 37, which is when you said that also lined up with, you kind of said that was the time when you were maybe not having to be high, not having to be disembodied. So what shifts at 37?
Well, I think maturity and age played a lot to it, right? And also a lot of really good therapy, a lot of therapy and a lot of mistakes. And I don't know. I think one of the things that I feel is a blessing of getting older is, we all kind of get the proverbial 4x4 on the back of the knees where you suddenly find yourself down in the dirt and crawling around. And those times I feel like were incredibly valuable for me because then you realize how far you can fall, and then you catch yourself or your community catches you, or it's a combination of those things, and you find that you're still here, and then you become more resilient. And so I'm really grateful for the hardships in my life because it made me a fucking fighter. And I think at that point, the economy had collapsed. It was after 2008, right? And so public education suddenly was massively defunded. I was getting screwed royally in my divorce. I was in absolute survival mode. I was kowtowing to a dominant narrative about who I was as a divorcee, as a woman with 3 kids, as woman pushing 40. I was turning my back on all of the safety. I shut my school down. I gave the big flip off to the school district. I said, I'm never doing this again. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do these things on my own. And I fumbled really hard, in a lot of ways. And I think I just was like, wow, what do I actually really want here? And so then you start to tease apart all of the things, and it's the beginning of the no fucks. And I really also really thank perimenopause for this, because I had a lot of incredible rage that was extremely valuable and helped me sort of burn down a lot of internal and external paradigms around who I thought I was and what I should or shouldn't be doing, and just fucking went for it and saved my own ass in that way. And in the process of it, I began what I call the great sort of coming home to myself. And I talk about that in my practice a lot of finally coming home and being my own best friend, finally coming home and saying, like, I am lovable, who I am, and all the mistakes I've made and all of the choices that I've made. Like, I don't need to prove myself to anyone else anymore. And then once you do that, it's an incredibly long, dark soul of the night. It's a very, I love the story of Vasilisa the Brave, which is an old tale. And as like so many of the um, like Tatterhood tales or any of these like Grimm's fairies tales, they're really about soul retrievals in my mind. And there's always some portion where you've lost a parent, I like lost your intuition, or you're trying to find your intuition. And it means you've got to get yourself down the path. You have to confront the Baba Yaga. You have to do the impossible tasks. And like once I realized like, oh, this is like part of the human journey and I'm down for it. And actually my traumas and the ways I've been forced to survive are actually tools that are in my tool belt. And if I reframe and reach for these tools, I can actually save my own ass. I can, and by part of that meaning like be vulnerable, ask for help, be vulnerable, ask for help, lead with vulnerability, ask for help.
And be vulnerable
Well,
and also ask for help, right?
You don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so part of it is like chucking toxic individualism, chucking toxic paradigms of like who you should be or what you should be doing, realizing that should and shame are like best friends and like fuck that noise. All of that kind of stuff is just super liberating.
Yeah. And not fucking easy.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
But this is what resilience is about. And I think that that's what, I think that's a big piece of what people miss is like, oh, if I fall down, if I get that proverbial 4x4 on the back of the knees, there must be something wrong with me, or I must have done something wrong. And I'm not going to recover from this. Now, recovery and resilience are extremely dependent upon systems of support. They can't happen in a vacuum. And so I just want to be clear that, yeah, it's a lot of scrappy internalized desire. And it's also that vulnerability and asking for help and realizing that we need each other. And in those ways, like, I think all of the shit that wasn't helpful started to push away, and the things that were truly helpful started to rise. And they were very sometimes nuanced and subtle and very different than what I thought. Yeah.
Would you be able to like share one of the like an example of that, like because I don't know, this just seems really poignant to me, this moment of I'm pushing away the shit I don't need, making room for the stuff I do, but you also have to, like you said, be vulnerable and be able to ask for it. And I'm just curious if there's like one or two things maybe that just come to mind of like I got this, I got some distance from this. And something like you said, it was subtle, like started to come in that like maybe was what you needed at that moment.
Yeah. So if that particular crossroads after the divorce, the economy had collapsed. I was in a district that had no contract for teachers for over 6 years. So I was one of the lowest paid teachers, even 14 years in. So the money wasn't adding up. And suddenly I was housing insecure. I was financially insecure. And I had worked really hard in my little community to become like this pillar. Like I was this teacher. Like my school was full. I had a wait list. People really looked up to me. And it was very, as so much of our young career is, it's like really built on ego, right? Like on the outward, you see me, I'm this married mom. I'm like living my values by homeschooling, but also having a public charter that's welcoming to homeschoolers. And I'm like, I've created my little, as we do in our 20s and 30s, it's like the empire building phase of our life, right? Like we're trying to create the structure within which that we're now coming out into the world. And I had done that, and I thought I would be tying shoes and wiping noses and singing songs in the forest until I was like 65 years old. And I thought I would also be married. I thought I would be a homeowner and I would have all these things. And none of that, it all just went away. And then on top of it, in the housing insecurity, the rental house that we were living in burned down.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so now I was unhoused with 3 young children, a full-time job, but I couldn't afford a place to live. And so I had to turn to this community that looked up to me and say, I'm really in a pickle. Like, I was traumatized. We literally escaped with our pajamas on our backs. We lost everything. And to be able to turn to my community and say, I'm really stuck. We have no place to go. We have nothing and I need help. And then trusting that that community would not reject me, but actually step up for me was something that really spoke to me. And I've talked about it to my now adult children a number of times. And I know that it was okay because my kids never knew at all. They just thought that 6 months when we didn't have our own house, I was just like literally being the coolest mom in the world, being like, why don't we spend the summer camping out at your best friend's house? Like, why don't we just spend the next 3 months like taking care of these other friends' houses while they're traveling? Wouldn't that be fun? And so like my little children at the time just thought we were on this great adventure. They never knew that things were as bad as they were. And I think at that same time, I forced myself, I had broken up with the person that I had been in the non-monogamous relationship with. And I was really like, I'm not going to lean on anyone like it romantically. I'm not going to lean on a man. I'm going to lean on myself. I'm going to lean on my girlfriends and I'm going to pull my energy in. And I'm going to figure out what my next move is. And, it wasn't like suddenly then everything shifted into ease and grace. It was another handful of really rough years. But it was, I think, the first time in my life I was not operating from a place of ego or trying to get other people to love me from the things that I was doing for them, but rather just like, can you love me in all my divorced, broke ass imperfection? Can you actually see me as a human being and love me anyway? And like, I've invested maybe 6 or 10 plus years in your family. Like, now I need help. And so just again, like leading with that vulnerability was probably the biggest key to let myself out of that cage. It's just saying, I don't know what to do and I need help.
Wow.
And learning to do that. Like you had no other, you didn't have much of a choice, but it's still, you have to make that transition to ask for the help. And it sounds like your community did support you.
They did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away, and I'm just so grateful for you sharing, Kristen. And there's a part of me that was so shocked just a moment ago when you said and in that I ended that non-monogamous relationship. I thought this was all before you jumped into the kitchen table poly, but you had come out of your marriage, and through this chaotic nightmare, you had started doing kitchen table polyamory for the first time.
Well, I did it out of fear of being alone. I did it out of fear of appearing to be someone who threw away a perfectly good marriage for no reason, right? Like there was a lot of fronting there, like a lot of fear of being alone, a lot of fear of like, how am I going to manage this? A lot of fear of other people's judgment.
Yeah.
And it's like hard enough. It's like just crazy the level of like indoctrinated bullshit people throw at you when you're a divorcee in this country. I mean, just so like every single fucking time. Oh, are your kids all from the same dad? Like, oh, you have 3 kids. Oh, is that all? Oh, just like all that kind of crap that's like deep inside of you and you don't even realize it. And so I was faking it through that whole fucking relationship so hard. I just was like, la, 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 la. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to focus on the yummy sex and I'm just going to focus on whatever, whatever. And then just never sleeping and just torturing myself all the time, trying to like make it into something that it actually wasn't, make myself into something I actually wasn't. And again, the really good therapist just being like, what would it be like if you just took your own pocket knife and just started cutting your ties to these ideas and these behaviors and like, you know, I love the question, like, how's this working for you? And I just kept going, it's not working, like,
I have to change something.
but I'm scared. I don't.
Yeah, it's not easy. I don't know how to do that. I know I have to change, but I don't want to do it.
Right. And so then out of that thing, it's like, again, thank God I lived that long. Thank God I never took myself out. Thank God I didn't like, that I broke through from my breakdowns and, was able to self-source or live in a small enough town before the internet. I don't even know, like a lot of grace, a lot of help, but just getting to the point where you're like, okay, life means you got to jump off some cliffs. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's fatal. In fact, you have to jump off a cliff in order to find your wings, in order to find whatever breeze is going to lift you up. And by breeze, I mean letting your community know that you need help and letting them be the wind under your wings. Those sorts of things are really hard won understandings. Like, if it isn't scaring the shit out of you, it's probably not worth doing. If you're gonna make a jump, you gotta jump off the fucking cliff and trust. You gotta believe in your own bullshit, delusion, whatever it is, you gotta believe that you can do it and you're gonna be okay. And you just don't get those kinds of hard won wisdoms unless you make a lot of mistakes and you fall down really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, from 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 where I'm like hearing the story, and some of that I feel like yes, you jumped, but there are times where it sounds like you were almost pushed, or you were backed up to it. It wasn't like, you kind of said like you jumped into the polyamorous situation sort of out of fear, and I love that distinction because a lot of times we talk to people who they come to this. They're like, I'm going to get on the apps and I'm really going to just like do this. And it sounds like that was almost a moment of you were backed up, heels at the edge, and you're like, well, I guess I jump now. Like I don't know what else to do but jump. And that's where you landed, right? And if the rest of life is swirling like that, and you're like, okay, but over here, these people all say they love me. There's sex and intimacy happening. It's really easy to be in those situations, even if they are not good for us, and be like, well, but what else? What else? Right? Like, I don't know how to get out, and it's better than nothing sometimes, right? But like you said, your therapist keeps asking you, like, how's that working for you? And it's almost like, well, I don't know, it's not working, but what the hell else am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a continual, the invitation is keep coming home. Come back to yourself, come back to yourself, come back to yourself. That's a lot to do though, because you're like, it's a lot of time going back and thinking about being 4 years old and getting your first record player, and the first records you're given are all Disney soundtracks. So like the indoctrination around who you are as a female-bodied person, what you truly mean in the world, and how you get to be meaningful to other people. Like, you got to really take that all apart. And like, the best metaphor I have is like, or if I'll with a client, I'll be like, okay, so you got this room full of all of these Lego creations. You bought all these kits. They were the only kits in the store. You bought the kits, you put the thing together, and then an earthquake happened and they all got thrown on the floor and now they're all broken. Like, okay, let's just take a moment to like be sad that those things that you worked really hard to build are now destroyed. Now, let's sort of shift a little bit and like, how can we look at all of these broken things and what do we do with them now?
Yeah.
Like, so in this way, like life can victimize you. The sovereignty is in like, now what's the meaning I'm going to make out of this and what's the fucking opportunity that I'm going to have out of this? And the opportunity is to go just like my kids would when they were little. They would build it, then they'd purposefully break it. And then they go, now I'm going to take this from the Millennial Falcon and I'm going to take this from the Harry Potter and I'm going to put it together and I'm going to make this new thing just for me. And that was actually happening for me. My boys, I have 3 kids and my boys are a couple years apart and they were little and they were really in the Lego phase of their childhood. And, you know, all their Legos got destroyed in the fire. And it was like, all of this was kind of happening at the same time as I was a teacher of small children and a mother of small children. I was like, oh, there's a lot of value in the way children move through the world. And they don't actually have the same blocks as us because they haven't been put on them.
Right.
Like, oh, the Lego thing broke. You just make a new creation out of your own thing. Oh, you lost a piece to that kid. No big deal. Let's go grab this other piece from this other kit and make something that we want and have just as much fun with it. And so, yes, it was great therapy, but it was also the inspiration of small children around me. And I just like, you know, they fall down and they look at you and you're like, wow, you know, it's either me going, oh my God, are you okay? Or like, hey, you know, this is what happens when you're a rough and tumble kid. You fall down, you bruise your knees, you know, how do you feel? I'm okay. Yeah, you're okay. We're okay. Let's keep going, you know? So it was a very rich and inspired time through all of the heartache and trauma as well.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
I love that.
I love that you bring that part in too.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what Lego set do you build then? What do you build for you out of all these pieces that have just crashed down? You've got lessons galore from you know, years and years of navigating relationships and work and community. What did you start to rebuild at this point?
Well, I think the gratitude was like I literally every single thing I thought was going to be some solid, reliable structure in my life, like they all went away. And it wasn't through anything that I had personally done. I could never have foreseen that Silicon Valley would become a thing. Remember, that was nothing. San Jose was literally a toxic cesspool of 25 Superfund sites were literally like so toxic that the federal government had to step in and say the amount of money it's going to take to clean this environmental nightmare up. Okay, that was happening. What is now billions of dollars of real estate was literally abandoned at the time. People were scared for me to go to San Jose State because the city was so broken down. Like, so you never could have seen what was going to happen. We never could have seen what was going to happen to the economy in 2008. I never could have foreseen that the town that I first moved to and our rent was $275 a month, that rent would suddenly jump to $4,000 a month in 30. Like, once you get to a point where you realize, okay, listen, I did everything I was supposed to do and everything still went sideways. And here I am. It's a very humbling time. And I think, again, I'm grateful for my own spirit. I'm grateful for my own fighter instincts and my own capacity. And I'm also really grateful that I was a mom at the time because there was nothing that was going to keep me from taking care of my kids. So maybe if I didn't have kids, I would have rolled over in some other way. Maybe it would have looked differently, but I didn't have that option. And so I think when you've lost everything, like literally right down to the fact that like the few things that didn't get destroyed in the fire were in a garage and the fire happened in February. And then literally the week after the fire, the garage roof collapsed right over the few boxes of personal items that I have and then destroyed those. So you literally have nothing. And you're like, okay. My mom was like, you need to move home with me and start over. And I was too stubborn to do that. And it's not like it was super easy, but I would say probably I've never been happier than I was when I started my fourth decade, because I was starting all over and I had this real like, well, fuck it kind of attitude. Like I'm either gonna do the patterns I did before and try to rebuild in the way I was taught to build and do all the things, knowing it could kind of end me up in the same place, feeling really self-abandoned and not having the social markers. So I could say, fuck the social markers. What do I really want? What do I really want? And what do I really need? And let's see if I can go after that, you know?
Mhm.
And so that's what I did.
Mhm. Mhm. It's beautiful. And I know it wasn't easy as we've come too many times. I'm curious what that looked like. Like what did you do?
What it looked like well, this was a practice that I started and I don't even know where this came from. And so credit to whoever gave me this idea. But like the year that I turned 40, I was doing a lot of trauma therapy and this idea that I was going to go back in time and I was going to revisit the years of growing up. So in my 40th year, I was 4. In my 41st year, I was 5. In my 42nd year, I was 6. And every year I would go back in time and I'd think about what was going on for me, my family, what were the traumas, what were the things that are happening, and who was I when I was that age? And so I'm going to heal for good. I'm going to be like, let's clean this up, whatever it is. And then also this year I'm 4 because I was a very parentified child. I didn't have a very childlike childhood. And I was like, what would it be like to be 4? What was I like when I was 4? What was I like when I was 5? And so I was very dedicated to reverse aging. I was very dedicated to joy. By the time I was in my early 40s, my kids were able to stay with their dad. You know, as hard as things were between us, he was a really good dad and he would take them for his week. So 2 weeks out of the month, I was free. I mean, I had to work, but I also didn't have little children to take care of. And this is an upshot of divorce that I think people forget is that you're like, if you actually have a co-parent that takes the kids, you can actually have a lot of freedom that some of your married friends don't have. And so I threw myself into joy and I threw myself into dance. And I say that dance like saved my life. Like, and so on the weeks I didn't have my kids, I was dancing like 4 days a week and really throwing myself into that and also throwing myself into dating from an adult place. And like, I was just going to follow the attraction. And so if they were queer platonic relationships, I had several of those. I fancied myself as a yummy little rocket here and there. Like I was able to have all kinds of different self-actualizing sexual experiences. And between sex and dance and play, I came home to myself. I don't know. I don't know what to say. The 40s were the best. I just had the best time. I've never been so broke in my life, uh, and so less worried about it. You know, just like I found a safe place to land. My kids were healthy. I was doing the best I could. And yeah, I just played a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also shows how healing play can be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's and just with what you've shared, I mean, you are healing and trying to undo so many years of stuffing stuff down, right? The shame that came that you put on yourself and on the woman that got naked in your dorm room, and all of these experiences that it sounds like you're now able to land in spaces and be like, well, what does Kristen actually want?
Mhm.
Not what do all these other people and society and structures and institutions say I should want.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I also have to give a lot of credit too, just to the atmosphere. I mean, I am talking about the Bay Area. And so I know that it's really different. It's not like that everywhere. But it was also a lot of gratitude for the people that were younger than me, because let's be honest, if you're a hot divorcee in your 40s, you're not none of your married friends are inviting you over. They do not want you around their partner. They do not want to feel your joy. And so, of course, like the age range of people that I was started to hang out with was significantly younger than me by at least 10 years or sometimes 20 years. And this is a generation that had language for shit I never had when I was their age. So, that's what that is. Oh, okay. All right. So that now I understand, and so it was a lot of also leadership from people that were younger than me that were like, come this way. It's safe in this direction. And you're like, okay, so it was like opening myself to new experiences, being willing to trash stories or ideas of ways of being and just like kind of kicking them to the curb and being able to also deal with the backlash I might get from even my own kids or other people that knew me in my professional world or in my previous incarnation. Like, I can handle your judgment around this and your criticism around it because I know what's going on for myself. And it's okay if you don't understand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I would love to just to hang in the 40s for a moment. And I'm curious if there was, like, it comes to mind a pivotal experience or timer, like some pivotal experiences you had in your 40s that you look back and you're like, that was part of me coming home, or this part of me coming home. Things that stick out to you that just from that period that were sort of those moments for you.
I would probably say the most powerful ones were my queer explorations. I would say probably some of the richest experiences I had were, and I would, I guess, label them as queer platonic. So just deeply romantic, emotionally connected, time spending, but no physical sex.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so being able to move with grace and ease with all different kinds of bodies, but I think the most healing was with male bodied people that were queer, identifying as bisexual, but practicing asexually, right? So, like, two bisexual beings with different bodies, but in this deeply loving, uh, intimate relationship where sex wasn't the gatekeeper for our intimacy and our vulnerability. I would say that's probably the most powerful relationships I had were the asexual ones, but deeply loving. Just the relief in my own nervous system as someone who was conditioned to lead with their sex, who had a lot of trauma around sex, just to be free in that way, mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing, absolutely liberating.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. And I'm curious how that shifted your relationship to relationships over time.
I let go over a lot of toxic conditioning. I mean, there is so much to be said about a woman who looks cishet normative, my age, right? Like, there are these demarcators of acceptability. And I stepped right into that very young, mostly out of a trauma response. Didn't know what love bombing was, didn't know what trauma bonding was, didn't have any of that language or understanding. I just knew that I came from this really bad place relationally, and I was going to fucking quote unquote do it right. And so there's a lot of ways that I think people, especially female bodied people, we just are like, we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And then if you do end up liberating yourself, there's so much shame and judgment. And there's a story of like, well, you better get right back on that horse. And I see that a lot in my 50s. There are people that are now widowers, right? Like people who were married 30 some odd years and then their spouse dies. It like, to no end, never, like, it just blows me away how women my age will like, line up to like grab onto that widower ASAP, doesn't even care if they're attracted to him because they own a house and they're willing to get married. And like, just because they want to escape that judgment of that trope that like, it's sad, pathetic, there must be something wrong with you. Like you were rejected or you rejected this institution. And now look where that got you, hun, right? Like you're broken, you're alone, and you're old, that. And like, and so like I started to, I started to really see that when I turned 50, and I started to really feel that encroaching in on me in a lot of ways. And the only reason it never got a hold of me is because of how liberated I became in my 40s. And I just am like, yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. And so what does like your relationship ecosystem, your sort of, what does relationships look like for you today?
Well, just to like, language is so touchy in our culture. It's so touchy. And I'm already like, oh my God, we're going to record this. It's going to be a moment in time. And then it's going to live in this cloud and infamy. And then 2 years from now, it's going to sound like total bullshit. So here's the disclaimer, right? Okay, whatever. Semantics. But I think the easiest way to describe where I'm at right now would be in this incredibly liberated, the most liberated way I can think of describing the way I move is as a relationship anarchist. I think as a woman of my age, of my generation, as a very proud feminist, to say, I'm open. I'm just open. And I'm not going to say that a sexual gate is going to then determine whether or not we're in some sort of something. And that's the gate that I have to walk through in order for something to be deeply loving, deeply intimate, deeply vulnerable, very important, priority in my life. And so, and in that way too, like, yeah, you could say I'm solo poly or an anarchist in some way. And also by that, I mean, like, I could leave this podcast today and go out into the world and meet someone and want something I was like, I wasn't planning on that. And that is actually so exciting to me. Just this idea that I can fall in love with you is my right. And like, if you consent to that, we can like be in love with each other. We get to decide whatever that means on whatever level that means. And so because of that orientation, I feel very permissed and unapologetic in the way like that I move through the world. And it makes me feel really open and excited about relationship and what that might mean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I can see so much how the queer platonic connections you talked about in relationships you talked about in your 40s, I mean, that is just what I heard. And that is very much the same way that like sex is just one of the many things we can do together. It's just an activity, and it's one way we can show our connection, or one way we can experience our connection, show our love, right? But we can be deeply in love, deeply committed, doing all of the things, and that could not be part of it. It's not a gate in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say this to people who are in mononormative relationships too. Like, you get old enough, hello, your body is going to be different. And I work with a lot with perimenopausal, postmenopausal people, male-bodied people that have, a lot of shame around erectile dysfunction, disease, stress, circumstances. Like, I'm sorry, but your body is going to change. And if sex was the gate and that meant everything to you, it's a really hard fall when that thing suddenly goes away or changes. And so in that way, again, I'm so grateful to the experiences I had in my 40s because I just don't have those hangups. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I think on the flip side too, right, I think it opens up the possibility that sex can happen in sort of in a vacuum too, right? Like we could have a sexual experience or a sexual connection. It could be this wonderful weekend romp, and that's it. That was the whole relationship. Was we had a great
Absolutely.
weekend on vacation, and that was it. We met each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need to escalate it in order for it to be complete.
Yeah.
I don't need to make it into something more than it wants to be. I can look for what wants to happen. And that's what I love about relationship anarchy is like I let the connection determine whatever that connection is. It's free to be whatever it wants to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious too how the work you've done and how it's shifted. How did things shift for you and leading into creating this game that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But kind of how has that transition been?
It's been a super intense journey. I mean, it's been a lot of really fun, but I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, like Isla, my business partner and dear friend of 15 years that did this with me, we were leaning into something we'd never done before. What is it like to create a product from scratch, bring it to market, put it out into the world? There have been definite times when we're like, oh my God, if I would have known it was going to be this hard, I don't know if I would have done it. I mean, really difficult situations. But I think, especially coming off of, we just got back from the ASECT conference in Las Vegas, and the game sold itself. I mean, we're talking sexual health professionals, sex therapists, sex educators, an extremely diverse, very queer, beautifully racially diverse group of professionals that came to the conference. And it was, I think, going back into the earlier part of the conversation where I feel like sometimes I've been a little ahead of the ball and people have been like, what the hell? Last weekend was like, oh my God, we might have actually hit the inflection point culturally, like right on the nose. Like, we just got so much great feedback. We sold a ton of product during that time. Like, people were like, you've hit the mark. Absolutely want and need this in our practice. And so I'm really grateful. I mean, after that experience was a really nice counterbalance to everything that we've lost, honestly, in the first quarter of this year with the defunding of the Small Business Development Center, the defunding of the USTPO for trademark and copyright support, the tariff threats. All of these things really impacted us and as a brand new startup little company. So to be able to go there and actually go now, like, don't give up hope yet, right? Like, this is actually a really needed thing. So yeah, I'm really grateful for the journey. It's been intense and beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you did create the game and it went so well last weekend. And you've made it through at least this phase of all of the really hard shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting anything new is, as you know, right?
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy. And especially so it was, 20 months or something of like work and production. And then we came out last fall. So we're still in our first year and we're just riding the waves.
Yeah.
I love that. And for anybody who's not familiar, I mean, we've talked to Isla and listeners, the links are in the show notes. You can go listen to that conversation as well. But for anyone who didn't listen to Isla's conversation with us, could you just catch us up really quick on what sort of the game is about, how it works briefly, and then a little bit more about what it's like to work with you sort of as a therapist in your professional work as well.
Okay. Well, Isla and I, like I said, we've been friends for 15 years. And I think one of the beauties and the hallmarks of a healthy relationship is that you evolve. And so this is like an evolution of our relationship, which has been a beautiful journey, also a healing journey, not always easy, but like luckily we have the skills to pay the bills and show up and have conversations when we need to have them. But the genesis of the game was really that we're both marriage and family therapists practicing here in California. We both love working with relationships. We come from a non-monogamy background, so we kind of launched right into like, hey, this is a population that we feel confident in serving. And it was a lot of texting or phone conversations like, we need a list of questions. Right? Like we need a list of questions. Like, people say like, I read the requisite books, right? The top 3 books, Polysecure, The Ethical Slut, More Than Two, whatever. Like we read them, but like, what do we do? And or people don't read, or they're like traumatized by a workbook or a worksheet. And so we're like, we were both a big fans of Esther Perel's game, and we have it in our offices. And we're like, well, what if we started creating this question? So it started as a Google document. And so then it just kind of grew from there. And then when we were looking for the product, we realized there wasn't one. There's one European product that is actually, I think, got some VC capital behind them now. So they are globally selling, but there wasn't last year. So we decided to see if we could do something and create something that we would be proud and happy to use in our own practice. And so then we tested it, found a great designer. Rest is kind of history.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the game is basically questions to help you dig into if we're going to open our relationship, or maybe we've opened it a long time ago and we just never talked about it because sometimes that's how things go. What are the questions are sort of ways to dig in and think about what do we want out of this partnership? How do we want to construct it and shape it for us?
Yeah. Or, it doesn't, so we definitely had geared the game somewhat toward mononormative people shifting their minds, because that's happening a lot. And we were seeing a lot of people sort of crashing and burning, like just maybe learning a little bit on Instagram or reading Polysecure, and then they like launch themselves into it and hurt themselves or hurt other people and contracted a lot. Yes, but I would say that it's not just for mononormative couples, like definitely anybody. And one of the things that we've done is we broke the deck down into 2 75 card decks. And the foundations deck is really tool for personal reflection. Why non-monogamy? What are my values? What am I most afraid of? How do I talk about hard things? What do I have to offer in a non-monogamous structure? So it's really to help people personally clarify so they can have more coherent conversations, even if the conversation is like, I don't do boundaries and this is why. Mm-hmm. Or I don't like to talk about these kinds of things and this is why. Here's what I do instead. This is my preference. So we were very pleased and feel very happy that first set of prompts is not necessarily geared toward even the practice. But if so, it's just like, okay, this is some ways you should think about beginning. Mm-hmm. Like just some things to keep in mind without telling people what to do. Say, there's something to consider. Mm-hmm. You might run into this thing about sharing sheets, or whether or not you feel okay with your partner going with their paramour to a place that is a really special place for you, or like what would happen if you're not in relationship with anyone right now, like, and you're starting to think about, as I was maybe at 40, like, wait a second now, I am a bisexual person. I am not interested in this particular way of being mononormative. And so like, how do I address these sort of codified ideas or ways of being? Like when I'm confronted with them, how do I respond rather than react? So we're trying to get people to be deeper, more critical thinkers, more highly emotionally intelligent, and capable of having hard conversations. And then the second deck is really geared toward people who've been practicing for a while. So you kind of had this no child policy, but now your metamors want to have a baby together. Or, now there's this other thing like about finances, or now somebody's not happy about this certain thing, but it's always been this way. Then what are you going to do? Just a lot more questions around like kids and money and like harder logistical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. And I will just share too, like we've got a copy of the game and we've actually seen it floating around the Bay a bit, and we've been to different events, and it's also a great tool. We've seen it be used as a great tool and experienced as a great tool when maybe you're meeting somebody new and you're just thinking like, well, how do you do non-monogamy? How do I do it? Because it's the one thing that but one of the things that we've really taken away from this show over the last 400 episodes is we say, okay, we're polyamorous or you're a relationship anarchist. Well, what does that mean? Right. And
What does
so
it mean? So what? Now what? Yeah.
Right. So these cards are such a great way to like dig in and think, okay, we're starting to maybe like each other, or maybe we hooked up and now we're like, oh, we want to keep it going, but like, are we aligned? How are we aligned? And so the conversations that can come from these questions are really great. So really grateful for the work and the game.
Thank you. We've gotten only fantastic feedback from the swinging community, from the RA community, from the closed throuple community, from different clients that we've worked with, even people who are not in relationship. Just, oh, I took it to a party. It wasn't even like a non-monogamy event. I just decided to drag it to the party because I'm a little socially awkward. And it was like this cool way of meeting people. And it led to these really interesting conversations. So anything that is in service to growth mindset and healthy, positive connection, yay.
Yeah. Thank you for doing all of that work and for coming on and sharing everything you did today. A quick reminder to anyone listening, links to everything you've shared and how to work with you will be in the show notes so people can go check that out and get your own copy or their own copy of the game.
Yeah. I think one of my passions is working with individuals to discover themselves, but I really love digging in and sort of helping people blow up and reorienting like the idea of relationship and commitment. Like, what is that? So I have a little practice here in the cute little mountain town of Felton, California. I see people in person, but I also work with people across California too. So thank you so much for supporting me and our game in this way, Emma and Finn. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're honored to be able to do it. And before we let you go today, is there anything else that we haven't asked about or talked about that you want to shout out into the world while you've got a microphone?
Love hard, love yourself harder.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's the most revolutionary act in the world that we could possibly be expressions of like, I love myself. I'm worthy of loving, and so I'm going to love myself. Even if I'm imperfect and make a lot of mistakes. Love is more love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so needed. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Kristen, for coming on, sharing your story. It was lovely to talk with you, and we're so excited for all of the amazing work you do. Links to Kristen's work, including the non-monogamy card game, are in the podcast show notes.
Yes, and echoing the gratitude from my side as well. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story, Kristen. And yeah, we're excited to hopefully have you back on again. I say that all the time, but I mean it.
Yes.
I always mean it. All right. And with that, just a couple of final things we wanted to remind you all about. Our next in-person retreat for our community is coming up October 3rd to the 5th here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So if you're looking for a little early fall getaway, you just got the kids back in school and you want to jet off already, come on and join us. We'll be out here. You can find out more information in the podcast show notes. There's a link to a program guide, which tells you everything you would need to know. And we also have our next upcoming virtual workshop for our community community on October 16th on personal agency, which is going to be taught by Nixie Knock.
Yes, and next week we have another interview for you. This one is going to be with Sarah. Sarah was previously on the podcast on episode 217. So if you want to do your homework and go listen to that one in the next week, go listen to that episode and then come back. You get an update from Sarah next week.
Yeah, and you get a gold star if you do your homework.
Yeah.
But not required.
It's not required.
Not
it is
required.
optional.
Always optional, but gold stars are the best.
Yes.
All right.
I think we're all set.
I think we're all set.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.